Hi there, everyone, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's January 28th. Today we celebrate a colonial botanist who introduced nearly 200 plants to British horticulture after sourcing them from his good friend, John Bartram, in America. We'll also learn about the man who mastered growing the poinsettia and established it as the official plant of Christmas. We'll hear some wonderful thoughts from one of my favorite writers, and we grow that garden library today with a book about styling your home with botanicals, making your own little horticultural haven. And then we'll wrap things up with the story of a woman who found her way to the best job ever, creating herb gardens. Sounds fantastic. Now, before we get to all of that, I just want to take a second to invite you to help me with my goal of getting more reviews for the Daily Gardener podcast over at Podchaser. So if you want to help me with my goal of getting 50 reviews, all you need to do is head on over to Podchaser, one word, podchaser.com. And then when you're there, search for the Daily Gardener and leave a review for the show. And when you do, I'll give you a shout out on the show. And I just want to say thank you in advance for helping me reach my goal. Next, I wanted to invite you to sign up for the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter. This is just a fun little email that you get from me every single Friday. I think of it as a little garden note from me to you. I share what's going on in my own home and garden, along with ideas and gardening inspiration that I save up all week to share with you. And in addition, you'll get an extra dose of botanical history and literature to get you through the weekend. So just head on over to the website for the show, thedailygardener.org, and sign up for the free Friday newsletter today. Here's today's curated article. Well, today's curated article is from the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland, and it was written by Louise March, and the title is called New Year Plant Hunt 2021 Day 1. And what I love about this post is we get to live vicariously through these posts, and we are hunting for plants. So fun. And I hope that when you read this post, you're inspired to go out and forage for plants in the natural areas around your home. It's such a good activity. Now, by the time I'm telling you about this post, there have been many more days of plant hunting on this website. But to kick things off, go ahead and check out this post and be eager to go through all of them, following along as they do their plant hunts throughout the year. So, if you'd like to read Louise's post, and I think it's so inspiring and fun, just search for the word hunt in the Facebook group for the show, and Louise's post will pop right up. And of course, if you're not in the Facebook group for the show, it's super easy to join. You don't have to worry about it. All you need to do the next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of a fellow of the Royal Society, an avid gardener, and a friend to many scientific leaders in the mid-18th century in London, Peter Collinson, who was born on this day, January 28th, in 1694. Peter Collinson introduced nearly 200 species of plants to British horticulture, importing many of them from his friend John Bartram in America. And when the American gardener John Custis learned that Peter was looking for the mountain cowslip, Primula auricula, he happily sent him a sample. Auricula means ear-shaped, and the mountain cowslip is commonly known as bear's ear from the shape of its leaves. And the cowslip is a spring flowering plant, and it's native to the mountainous areas of Europe. Now, Custis also sent Peter a Virginia bluebell, or Virginia cowslip, Mertensia virginica. This plant is another spring beauty that can be found in woodlands. And I have to say that the blue of a Virginia bluebell is so striking, and it's an old-fashioned favorite for many gardeners. The Virginia bluebell is known as lungwort or oysterwort, and it got that rather unattractive common name because people believed that it had medicinal properties for treating lung disorders, and also the leaves taste like oysters. And Virginia bluebells bloom right alongside daffodils, so you end up with a beautiful yellow and blue combination together in the garden, something highly coveted and gorgeous. Now, Peter was not the only gardener in search of Virginia bluebells. Thomas Jefferson grew them at Monticello, and he loved them so much that they were often referred to as Jefferson's blue funnel flowers. So the next time you see lungwort, you can impress your garden friends by calling them Jefferson's blue funnel flowers. And as for Peter, he once wrote, "Forget not me and my garden." Well, given Peter's influence on English gardens, he would be pleased to know that after all these years, he has not been forgotten. In 2010, the author Andrea Wolf wrote about Peter in her book, The Brother Gardeners, A Generation of Gentlemen Naturalists and the Birth of an Obsession. And it is a fantastic book. And today is the birthday of the nurseryman known as Mr. Poinsettia, Paul Ecke Sr., who was born on this day, January 28th, 1895, in Magdeburg, Germany. Paul and his family immigrated to the United States in 1906. And when Paul took over his father's nursery business, located on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood in the early 1920s, the poinsettia, or Euphorbia pulcherrima, was a fragile, outdoor, wild plant, and Paul fell in love with it immediately. He felt that the poinsettia was the perfect fit for the holiday season because the bloom occurred naturally during that time of year. By 1924, Paul was forced out of Hollywood due to the movie business, and that's when he brought his family and the nursery to San Diego County. Paul and his wife, Magdalena, had 4 children, and they purchased 40 acres of land in Encinitas. It was here that Paul would turn his passion for poinsettias into a powerhouse. And at one point, Paul's nursery controlled 90% of the poinsettia market in the United States. At first, Paul raised poinsettias in the fields on the ranch. Each spring, the plants were harvested and then loaded onto 2 railroad cars and sent to greenhouse growers all along the East Coast. When Paul wasn't growing poinsettias, he was talking poinsettias, and he started calling poinsettias the Christmas flower. Paul was endlessly marketing poinsettias and praising their attributes as a harbinger of Christmas. Now, initially, Paul worked to decrease the growing time of the poinsettia. And by getting the time to bloom down from 18 months to just 8 months, Paul made it possible for the poinsettia to be grown indoors. After figuring out how to propagate the plant through cuttings, Paul was soon able to ship poinsettias around the world by plane. In the 1960s, Paul's son, Paul Jr., took over the business, and he cleverly sent poinsettias to all the major television shows. When the holiday programs aired, there were the poinsettias in all their glory, decorating the sets and stages of all the major programs. And when Paul Jr. learned that women's magazines did their photo shoots for the holidays over the summer, he began growing a poinsettia crop that peaked in July. Magazines like Women's Day and Sunset were thrilled to feature the poinsettia in their Christmas magazines, alongside Christmas trees and mistletoe. This venture was regarded as the Ecke family's most significant marketing success and made the poinsettia synonymous with Christmas. Today, gardeners are fascinated to learn that the Ecke family distinguished themselves as a superior grower of poinsettias by using a secret technique to keep their plants compact and hardy. And their solution was simple. They grafted 2 varieties of poinsettia together, causing every seedling to branch and become bushy. Competitor poinsettias were leggy and prone to falling open, but not so with the Ecke poinsettia. By the 1990s, the Ecke growing secret was out of the bag, and competitors began grafting poinsettias together to compete with the Ecke family. And today, believe it or not, the Ecke family doesn't grow a single poinsettia on their farm in San Diego County. Finally, one of Paul's poinsettia pet peeves is the commonly held belief that poinsettias are poisonous. And over the years, sometimes that fear would prevent a pet owner or a young mother from buying a poinsettia. And Paul Ecke recognized the threat posed by this false belief. And so he fought to reveal the truth one interview at a time. It turns out that a 50-pound child would have to eat roughly 500 poinsettia leaves before they would even begin to have a stomach ache. Furthermore, the plant is not dangerous to pets. And here's where things get crazy. Paul would regularly eat poinsettia leaves on camera during interviews over the holiday season to prove this point. When the Ecke nursery sold in 2012, it still controlled over half the poinsettia market in the world. During the holiday season, roughly 75 million poinsettia plants are sold, most to women over 40. In Unearthed Words, today's words are for the entry for January 28th from China Bale's Book of Days by the author Susan Wittig Elbert. The daisy's genus name, Bellis, meaning martial or warlike, refers to its use by Roman doctors as a common treatment for battlefield wounds. John Gerard, the 16th century herbalist and author of the first important herbal written in English, wrote, "The leaves of the daisy, stamped, take away bruises and swellings." In old time, it was called bruisewort. But daisies weren't just popular medicine. They were also popular for making prophecies. You've certainly learned the most famous one, he loves me not. The last petal decides the question, but its unreliability is unfortunately notorious. You can, however, tell the seasons by the coming of daisies. It's spring in English Midlands, people say, when you can put your foot on 9 daisies. But be careful. Dreaming of daisies in spring or summer brings good luck. But if you dream of them in the fall or winter, bad luck is on the way. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Botanical Style by Selena Lake. This book came out in 2016, and the subtitle is Inspirational Decorating with Nature, Plants, and Florals. In this book, stylist Selena Lake shares how to tap in to the current trend for bringing nature, plants, and florals into the heart of your home. Selena reviews the ingredients she uses to achieve her signature look: antique botanical prints and artworks, flower stalls, potting sheds, and houseplants. Then she shares how these items can be used to transform your home into a botanical paradise. Next, Selena shares 5 aspects of her botanical styling, from vintage and boho botanicals to natural botanicals and tropical specimens. This book is 160 pages of Selena's innovative style tips for working with botanicals to create a modern garden ambience in your home. You can get a copy of Botanical Style by Selena Lake and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $4. And whether you read your garden books in the bathtub or out in the hammock, you don't need to worry about getting a used, lovely copy of this book. It's a steal. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, January 28th, in 1983, that the Charlotte News shared an article by Edie Lowe called Herb Garden, Just Like Artwork. Here's an excerpt. To Deborah Zimmerman, designing an herb garden is like painting a picture or composing a song. Deborah said, "You have to orchestrate a harmonious blend of textures and colors and heights. When designing a garden, my canvas is the ground. My picture is of the finished garden, and my song is the finished garden." Deborah's latest design is a formal Elizabethan herb garden in the backyard of the restored Blair Bowden House on Poplar Street. Deborah became interested in herbs and spices about 12 years ago. She said, "I started a little business called Helping Hand Services, planting herbs and spices in people's gardens. It started out as a means of supporting myself in school. It grew so quickly, and I enjoyed it so much. And I found myself feeling, here I'm being creative. I'm spreading beauty in yards, working with plants and soil, which I love, and I'm getting paid to learn and create." Now, Deborah is continually studying herbs and spices, and she's particularly fond of designing gardens like those from the Elizabethan era in the 16th and 17th centuries. She said, "There's not much difference in the Elizabethan gardens of the 18th century and Victorian gardens. The main difference is the type of herbs they favored in their gardens. The Elizabethan gardens were more apt to have highly scented plants because of the period's sanitation problems. They would pick herbs and spread them on the walks and floors. And as company came and walked on the herbs, they'd be crushed, releasing the scent. Herbs were the air fresheners of the day. Because people seldom bathed, scented herbs and spices were also worn around the neck. Now, the Victorian era was more sophisticated. Baths became popular, and perfumes and scented water made from herbs and spices were used. And Deborah said Victorian people loved rose water. The damask rose was the popular flower then, and it's the most highly scented rose there is. Deborah's 4th Ward garden, covering a 10 by 10 foot space, is fashioned with circles and diamonds inside a square. And each of the 4 points of the square is finished in a fleur-de-lis pattern. Deborah used creeping thyme and candy tuft as a border hedge for the garden, and the rest of the pattern is carried out with lavender, rosemary, lemon verbena, aromatic herbs, clove pinks, rose geranium, basil, sage, savory, chives, coriander, and chamomile. And this 100 square foot garden will likely cost between $250 and $600. But Deborah said the most important thing is to like what you're doing. If you're happy in your work, you tend to grow. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.